Hot take, it's totally fine to have AI write most of your code, while at the same time, software engineer jobs are not going anywhere. It's just going to change what they have to be specialized in and what they have to know. It's going to move from having to be able to memorize some certain syntaxes to really understanding what goes into a program, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. And luckily, in this part of CS50++, we're going to cover one of these aspects that's very important to know, and that's how programs are actually built. And right now, we're specifically talking about how the compiler program actually works and what all goes into that. So we talked earlier about the compiler versus interpreter. They're both programs, again, remember that, and they end up making machine code, which is this binary code. Now, the compiler we talked about, especially for C, is much more than just one step. There's actually 4 steps of this GCC or GNU compiler going on, and we're going to cover that right now. First step in our compiler's process towards building that machine code is actually going to be pre-processing, where it's going to it's still sticking with source code, and it's going to essentially fill in the gaps such as macros we might have said, or include statements, so it'll bring these libraries in, the source code. This will make more sense later on when we talk about linkers. And it's going to remove some of the comments that we have. And we saw how we had our include statement for the standard lib, CS50, other header files. It's going to take that code from CS50 and the source library, or rather the standard library, and it's going to move that source code into our normal C code where we were actually working on our hello program. The macros, we'll define this later in another video, but for now you can think of them as one-line functions that essentially just give one return statement and can be used throughout our whole program. It'll make more sense later. We can see here, if we wanted to in our hello world program actually use these macros, we would use #define, and then essentially the variable name. People might get mad at me for calling it a variable name, but it's okay for now. And then what we want it to be, and it's going to take this variable, and wherever it's included, it's going to be Bryce. And what's important to know is that this does not use memory. It's rather a text insertion. And again, this pre-processing is happening all before any compiling happens. We see if we use our GCC program, and specifically the -e program for that first step, we pass in the input, which is the hello world file in C. And just looking at a glimpse of this output, you can